Hi, so I was hoping to do this video after I've read a few more anti-natalist and pro-natalist books and arguments and philosophical discussions and things. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot available on the internet. There are some books, and some of them are really expensive because, I don't know, they're published by professors, so therefore they're super expensive. Um, and there are a couple of interviews on YouTube, but it's like really not really enough for me. And you've got some crazy people. Oh, I wouldn't call him crazy, but I can't remember his name. He's this, I think he's American, blonde guy who's always like ranting and raving about anti-natalism. And I think he makes really good points, but I don't like the way that he puts it across because he's often just like swearing and insulting people who disagree with him and shouting and stuff, and I just feel like that's not a very good way to make an argument, because usually people resort to those things when they have a weak argument. And I think he actually has, he's a very intelligent man, he makes really good points. I like some of the points he's made, I've even used them myself when talking to other people, because I learned off him, basically. But yeah, anyway, I'll link one of his YouTube channels below because he's got a lot of channels. I think I'll put his name on the screen because I can't remember what it is right now. And then of course you have David Benatar, who's a famous philosopher from Cape Town University, who makes very strong arguments and has just released a new book this year, which I'm hoping to read soon. But yeah, I decided that I wouldn't read up on all these books before doing this video after all, even though I love, learning lots of strong arguments I can make, because ironically I came to this decision all by myself without having done any studying of philosophy specifically about antinatalism or pronatalism, or procreation, or whatever you want to call it. Having children, basically. So, yeah. So I came to a conclusion all by myself, and I'll tell you how I came to a conclusion. It's quite personal, but I will tell you because I think that you may well be able to relate to this. So I was considering having children soon, and I basically I was playing out how's it going to be, what's going to happen. I tend to plan a lot in my head, so of course, the first thing you think is, how is it going to be for me? Is it going to work out for me? Well, that's just me anyway, I'm quite selfish like that. How's it going to be for me? Am I going to be able to look after a baby? Am I going to be able to afford to feed it? Am I going to be able to afford to do all the things I want for the baby? Am I going to be able to bring it up in the way I want to bring it up? And you don't really look at things from the baby's perspective, or the baby that is going to grow into a child, that is going to grow into an adult, that's going to have to live in a society and work and put up with the politicians, So, so yeah, I was kind of like, from that perspective, I was like, yeah, I can make this work. That'll be fine. From my perspective, I was like, yeah, I can make this work. That'll be fine. But then I started thinking, okay, so what about when they're going away to university? What about when they are getting a job and living on their own? And I basically concluded that there are so many possible horrible things that could happen to them. Just in daily life, and how the economy is, or wars, or whatever. And I can't control those things, I can't protect them. So I felt like I would be really, really irresponsible to create a life that I wasn't sure I could ensure would be a happy life, and not one filled with tragedy and struggle and loss. So pretty much on the spot at that point, I decided that I actually wouldn't responsibly be able to create a life, and that my children are better off dead, as in never having been born. And I know that that's really shocking and emotional for a lot of people, because we are mainly, I think, quite emotionally tied to the human race continuing itself. You know, we want to see the human race get better. I think a lot of people can say that. You know, we have different ideas about how that would look, but I think we all want to see the human race get better. And if we don't continue to have children, that's not going to happen. So I can totally understand why that seems quite shocking for someone to come to basically the moral conclusion that it's wrong to have kids and it's wrong to reproduce, and therefore we should go extinct. I've been looking for counter-arguments to this, and I can't find any. In fact, the more I learn about it, the more I just see it as pretty much irrefutable. Of course, if you'd like to try to refute these arguments, then you can comment below. But when I heard David Benatar's argument, he makes a very kind of mathematical equation, and I think I'll try putting an image here just to try and explain it. So if you see a 4-part grid, and at the top of one is being born, and at the top of the other is not being born. I'm not self-harming, by the way, that's from my juicer. And basically, if you're born, you can experience pleasure and the joys of life, and if you are born, you can also experience potentially great suffering, but pretty much guaranteed at least some suffering. Whereas if you're not born, I think the grid was over there. I don't know where that grid went. If you're not born, you can't experience joy, you can't experience any kind of pleasure or anything, and you also won't experience any type of suffering, any kind of desire or longing or heartbreak or anything. You won't experience any sadness, any happiness. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, but that's unfair on the unborn because it would benefit them to experience the joys of life, and besides, the struggles of life will build their character or whatever. Now, I just basically haven't found any convincing argument to inflict pain on someone without their consent because it may result in them feeling joy when they are actually unborn, so that means that they already don't have any desire for joy or any need to feel joy in the first place. By giving birth to a child with needs, you're essentially creating a problem, because now that child's needs need to be satisfied, or else that child is going to suffer. For example, if you don't feed the child, they're going to starve to death. So, yeah, you're creating a problem when you create a child, and they are the one who's going to suffer if these problems are not solved. Now, so some people say, oh, you know, this is what's it's in the unborn's best interest to be born. No, it's not. I mean, how can you argue that? They don't have any interest, they're unborn. However, causing pain to someone who's unborn, it's a little bit tricky to talk about because it's not something that we talk about much, so it's a little bit like we don't have the words or the concepts to kind of understand this type of thing. But if someone's unborn, do they have interests? Well, no, they don't have any interests. But causing someone to be born and then guaranteeing that they're going to suffer, that baby who has been born does have interests, and it is unfair that they were born and now will suffer for the rest of their life in some way or another every day when they needn't, because there's ultimately no reason for them to be alive in the first place. And if you're religious and you believe in hell, you're basically risking a non-existent soul ending up in hell for the off chance that they might end up in heaven, but you actually can't control that because they're an independent person, you can't control everything they do. So isn't it better to leave them unborn? And then other people will say like, oh, well, it's not about what's best for the child, it's about what's best for society and what's best for people who are already alive. And people who are already alive, we need taxpayers, you know. You better give birth so we can have some taxpayers. You better give birth so we can continue, like, our race, because otherwise the white race is going to be genocided. What other arguments have I had? Okay. If we continue like human society and keep procreating and creating more children, then eventually we might reach a utopia that will justify all the suffering that's come before. So the reason I don't agree with that is because I think it's morally wrong to use people against their will to achieve an end that may not even come about and that they are not even going to be alive to experience. You know, that's called slavery. I mean, you know, that is just slavery by another name kind of thing. Yeah, so I haven't been able to find any really good arguments to have children. If you can think of a really good reason why I should have children, you know, I'd love to hear it, but I'm not willing to do something. I'm not willing to create a life where it's morally wrong for me to do so. So I'm not willing to create a person who is going to suffer, and that's inevitable, that's just part of life. And I'm not willing to create another little minion to be used by society for society, society's own ends. Like, society isn't even a being, you know? Yeah, this is the conclusion I've come to. I am the kind of person who, when I'm presented with new evidence, I do change my mind about things, even though I know I seem like I'm really stuck in my ways about certain topics. But actually, the reason I came to these topics in the first place is because I thought about them and I changed my mind from my previous stance. So I do consider arguments. If you can make a good argument, I'll listen to it. But I have been asking people on Facebook if they have any good arguments about this. I've listened to alternative views and things, and so far I haven't found any good reason to reproduce, and with it being either in the best interest, for it being in the best interest of a child for me to do that. It's not, unfortunately. I think the only thing that could really make me change my mind at this point, apart from some like amazing argument that I haven't thought of or read yet, would be if there was some kind of spiritual realm that all the suffering that happens in this realm somehow benefited, and it was like eternally benefited. That might make me consider changing my mind, although I still would see it as a kind of slavery that was not fair. Another kind of one is if we humans have souls and the soul is like waiting to come into this reality so they can play reality like a video game, and then they're going to leave, and that's a consensual choice that they're making. Like that could be an okay reason to justify having children. But I would need really, really strong evidence of these spiritual realms and otherworldly things happening for me to be willing to have children. And so far, I am what I would call a reluctant atheist. Like, I would love there to be some, like, spiritual realm or whatever that makes life more meaningful than we just happen to be here by chance kind of thing. But I haven't seen any good evidence. So, you know, if there are any, like, angels out there that want to, like, appear in front of me and have a conversation without me getting, like, put in a mental hospital, that would be awesome. But it's not happening, so I'm gonna have to stay an atheist until I see any evidence to the contrary. So I think one of the questions that people might ask next is, So, do you think that, like, everyone should stop reproducing because it's morally wrong to procreate? And therefore, do you think that the human race should go extinct? Um, and I have to say, right now, like, emotionally, I don't want that to happen. But from a rational perspective, that seems like the only logical way to prevent unnecessary suffering. And I feel like we have a duty to do that. Now, I'm really hoping that I'm wrong with the anti-natalism, because I don't want that to happen from an emotional perspective, but from a rational perspective, I refuse to participate in something that could be unnecessarily harmful. Yeah, so the next question people might ask is, well, do you think that we should kill all animals? Or do you think that we should make the earth so damaged that no more life could possibly spawn on it? And you know, again, like, emotionally, that makes me really sad. I didn't like that idea. But, and yeah, I actually don't agree with that idea, because I don't feel like we have an obligation to prevent the suffering that would be caused by nature. I feel like we have an obligation to prevent our actions knowingly causing harm to others or causing unnecessary suffering to others. So, I know this is like a super controversial topic, but I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not going to get sterilized anytime soon, because I know that I might change my mind about this. But if I don't change my mind in the next 5 to 10 years, then I'm just gonna not have kids. And it's not a super big deal. I'm only one person, so if I'm wrong, it's not a huge big deal. You know, I'll continue to speak about and promote anti-natalism, because honestly, I'm looking for someone to, like, destroy this argument. But I just haven't found anyone, so I'll continue to, like, perpetuate an argument until I find someone who can convince me otherwise. Right, so if you want to know more about anti-natalism, I'm going to link to, like, a couple of interviews and stuff so you can learn more about it. If you want to make a more informed decision about having children. I definitely think that you have an obligation to your potential future children to make an informed decision, so you should really, really consider what a wide range of philosophers have to say on the topic. Okay, thanks for watching. If you want to hear more random crazy philosophy like this, please subscribe to my channel. And if you liked this video, which I suspect the majority of the population may not, but if you did like this video, please like it, and I'd love to hear your comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.